Dukes and Bell, Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. We were at Falcons camp last week, and Cameron Wolfe showed up, NFL Network. He was doing all the things, checking out our Falcons. And then he got a chance to be down there in Miami because he was actually down there, I think, before he came up to see the Falcons. And then these two teams practiced over the last couple of days. And Mike, he joins us on the WadeFord.com hotline. And it's good to have you on, Cameron. I saw your tweets, man. And listen, it's positive to hear from people who don't, cover this team on a local basis. And you're one of the guys who are saying, hey, you've been impressed with what you've seen. Tell us what you think about this team and what you've seen.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is, you go into joint practices with some sort of preconceived notion. And I think a lot of the notion that I had and a lot of people had is that you look at the speed the Dolphins have on offense and they're going to have their way with the Falcons defense. And it was not that case. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, and I tweeted this, is that this Falcons defense is not the Falcons defense of old. Terry Fontenot, Ryan Nielsen, Arthur Smith have really did a good job of rebuilding this group. They finally had some money to spend, and I think it's showing. The DBs did not look overwhelmed by Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's speed. In fact, they won a lot of reps. And that defensive front, there was the couple of days they had out there, they were winning a lot of those battles against the Dolphins' offensive line. They look like the more physical team in the trenches. And look, it's just 2 days of practice. And so I don't want to overreact and say, hey, you're going to the Super Bowl, Falcons fans. But I do think that's encouraging for a team that, has been the worst pass rush team in the league the last 2 years. Right. And for a team that, honestly, their defense has been, one of the bottom teams in the league, too. So I think that side of the ball, it looks like, at least from my eyes at this stage of the offseason, that is going to be significantly improved upon from last season. And to me, that's a good start for this team.
Yeah, man, there were really big names as far as edge rushers. We went and got Calais Campbell and Bud Dupree. Obviously, we'll be lucky, if they can pop for us in 1 year. But we're just happy that we've, got some dudes who can get guys on the ground. And I guess, Cameron, the big question is, are the guys we drafted going to pop? We've got Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State, second rounder. We picked up Caden Ellis and Onyemata. We stole dudes from the Saints. So we've got depth, and we've got guys who can really get after it, we think. Yeah,
I think that you mentioned it, the depth. A lot of times when you have multiple players, you mentioned some of those guys there. David Onyemata is another guy who they picked up from the Saints who brings that pressure inside. And then don't forget about Grady Jarrett. He's been the guy here for a while. It's a lot easier when you're not double-teamed every play. If you're not the only guy on the line that matters, now you have one-on-one opportunities, and all of a sudden you can be the dominant player consistently that a lot of Falcons fans know he is. And so I think overall it may not be the one name that stands out. Maybe it's the collection of talent and depth of the guys you mentioned, even some guys you don't mention. When you're 6 or 7 deep on your front seven of guys who can win one-on-one matchups, that allows you the ability to get those one-on-one matchups rather than double teams. And so I think that's the biggest thing you'll see. I don't know that there's a 12-plus sack guy on this roster, but I do think that you're going to have a collection of dudes who get 6 to 8 sacks that I think add up to a group that, maybe you don't jump to the top 10, but to me, if the Falcons jump from 31st to middle of the pack, I think that's a big jump that they would take.
We're talking with Cameron Wolfe, guys. You watch him on NFL Network. He was down there checking out our squad, the Falcons, and, of course, the Dolphins. They play the first preseason game tomorrow right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. 5 o'clock pregame, kicks at 7. Cameron, what's your thoughts on Desmond Ritter? My thing, as I've seen him at camp, has been the hesitation, okay? Some of that is, your situational football. You're doing certain things. You're working on things. Then there are other times where it's 11 on 11 or 7 on 7, and I'm going, hey, pull! Let that thing go, and I need to see more of that. What are your interpretations of what you've seen from Ritter?
Yeah, he's been up and down. I'm going to give you guys the real. I think there's some days I've been in practice where he's been really inaccurate consistently. He's been having some plays where he's been making some really good throws, and I'm like, okay, I can see what Arthur Smith loves about this dude. And some other days, and I'm like, why did he miss that pass? Right? And so I want to see a little bit more consistency from him. In that perspective, I do think you're on the money with I think one thing they really want him to do is take those deep shots a little bit more and really test the defense with the length and not just say, hey, we're going short and intermediate, because that's one area where I have seen him have some success. When he gets flowing in a 2-minute drill, when he gets flowing in 11 on 11s, he gets pretty good passes on the intermediate and short passes. It's typically when he has to unload a little bit where you see that hesitancy that you mentioned. But here's the thing I would say with Desmond Ritter. I don't think you need him to be a top 10 quarterback. You definitely don't need him to be Patrick Mahomes. The comp that I've been telling people is if you look at Ryan Tannehill and what he was at 2019 and 2020 under Arthur Smith in Tennessee, I think that's the goal that you want, at least at this early young stage of Desmond Ritter. That Tannehill was efficient. He was really good off play action, and he allowed his playmakers to eat. And I think that's really what you want with Desmond Ritter. Just get the ball to Drake, get the ball to Kyle, get the ball to Bijan. If you're somewhere in the 65% accuracy mark, you don't have to throw for 4,000 yards for this team to win an NFC South. And so I think expectations, if you have that mindset, then I think Desmond Ritter is reasonable for him to get there. But I will say I do need to see him more, which is why I know Arthur Smith hasn't made the call, but I would love to see him tomorrow in the preseason. I would love to see him get those reps against NFL defenses to see if it helps him with a little bit more reps and experience.
We're on the same page, man. Cameron Wolfe's with us from NFL Network, and that's the thing, Cam, because we got some folks that are still on the fence because either they wanted Bryce Young or the Lamar Jackson thing, which was obviously pie in the sky, but it was still a hell of a conversation for obvious reasons here in Atlanta. But you're right. It's the same things that Crow and I say. It's not that he's not bad or you want something that pops, and that's why I'd love to see him give an opportunity, especially because he only played 4 games. If he only plays like 2 series against Miami on Friday, is that going to be enough? And how do you handle it in the preseason nowadays with just 3 games?
Yeah, it's a balance because, guys, the worst fear for coaches is that you get somebody hurt. Arthur Smith's thinking, man, if we hold the guy out to the second quarter, what if somebody rolls up on my quarterback's knees and there's my season, right? So, but the whole idea is you got every game of the season that you have that worry. I'm not a coach, so maybe I'm a little bit more risky. But to me, I don't coach out of fear. I say, hey, I need to see more, and it's based on your own gauge, right? A lot of coaches will see joint practices and say, I've seen enough. And if Arthur Smith doesn't start Desmond Ritter tomorrow, I guarantee you his thought is going to be, hey, we got enough work out of Miami and joint practices that we saw enough, right? But for me, I have a little bit more of unknown with Desmond. Maybe they know a little bit more than me. From what I've seen, I want to see more. I want to see him with Kyle Pitts more. I still have some questions about their chemistry. I haven't seen enough of Kyle Pitts and Desmond Ritter and heavy 11-11 drills to know, are they comfortable together? Same with Drake London and Bijan within this offense. And so, of course, you have next week. This is just the first preseason game, and so I expect Desmond to play for sure next week. But to me, this is the opportunity to maximize those reps. And I don't really see as much of a negative to see Desmond Ritter for the first quarter, the first quarter and a half, heck, even the first half, if things don't go as well as you want early on.
Kim, you've covered the Dolphins as well. He's going to be all over the place, guys, in the Southeast throughout the course of the season, and you'll be checking him out on NFL Network. What do you make of where they're at with Mike McDaniel? To the O-line, is it any good? I think there are a lot more questions than what we thought with the Dolphins, even though the personnel on paper looks really good.
Yeah, the Dolphins are interesting because, and I'm actually in Charlotte because I was doing joint practices with the Jets and Panthers after this, but I feel like maybe 25 of the 32 teams in the league have questions about their offensive line. Fortunately for Atlanta, I think the Falcons may be one of those 7 to 10 teams who don't. They have a really good offensive line, and I don't think there's much question marks there. But the Dolphins, their offensive line was a question last year, and I think it's even more of a question this year. Their left guard has been a kind of revolving competition throughout camp. Liam Eichenberg is the guy they wanted to win that job, but Isaiah Wynn's been playing a lot there. And then as far as right tackle, Austin Jackson's another young player they drafted in the first round a couple years ago who just hasn't really showed up to his draft potential yet. And so there's a couple spots there where I'm concerned, and especially when you have a quarterback like Tua where the complete onus for this offense is keeping him healthy. Not having an offensive line you feel great about is not what you want to hear. So here's what I would say about that offense, though. When they were healthy, they were a top 3 offense in football, particularly with the passing attack. And so I'm not as concerned with them as far as being able to make plays and get yards as much as can you keep the quarterback healthy. Because I think when they say hike, I think they're a fast twitch, timing-based offense. Two is going to be a lot of 3-step drops. And you got Tyreek and Waddle, who, even though the Falcons did play well in joint practices, nobody could cover Tyreek, and nobody across the league is going to be able to cover that speed. They feel like they can hide some of their issues. And so I'm less concerned about the big playability and more about can you keep your quarterback upright.
Only got a few minutes left with Cameron Wolfe, guys, from NFL Network. Just real quick, in our division, is it a total toss-up between us and the Saints? I mean, we don't think as highly of Derek Carr as some other folks in the media do.
Yeah, I think it is wide open. I think I told you guys last time I was here, if I was projecting, I would say that I think Atlanta and Carolina battle for this division. I'm high on both of those teams in there. I know the Saints are the quote-unquote betting favorite, but I think they lost a lot of talent in the defensive front, particularly. Half of those guys went to Atlanta. And so you look at that defensive group, and that's been the strength of the team. I'm not sure how good that defense is. And then they have some question marks on offense. You know, Michael Thomas hasn't been healthy in 2 years. Alvin Kamara is suspended for the first few games of the season. And then Derek Carr is coming into a new offense. And so, to me, I think it's a three-man race. I don't think Tampa has much of a chance to win with their quarterback play. But I can see any of those three teams win a division. And honestly, I think it'll be a better division than it was last year. So I don't know that 8-9 gets it done this year. You might have to get 9-8 or 10-7 to get that division title.
National NFL reporter with the NFL Network. He's doing work. Cameron Wolfe, appreciate you, bro, for stopping by. Great stuff. We look forward to talking with you down the road.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, fellas. Have a great one.
Cool,
right,
man.
Good stuff. And you talk about keeping it on point, Mike. He's telling you everything that we've been seeing and trying to communicate to you guys. But it is good to know that we look good in these practices. And I got to take that as a positive.